Today, I'd like to take a look at some of the goings-ons of Jacob and Rachel as they were in Haran and as they were kind of getting used to being family. Because in chapter 30 of the book of Genesis, there's a lot of different aspects of their relationship that come out. Rachel now is becoming envious of her sister. Uh, Jacob gets into the situation where he first has to marry Leah, then he marries Rachel, but Leah is the one who's having the children. So Rachel is there. She's like, wow, Leah's having all the children. I'm not having any children. Things aren't going well for me. Uh, and so what does she do? She becomes angry at Jacob. Jacob is kind of caught in the bind here between the two, and he's like, what am I going to do here? And so it's a crazy situation, but she takes her anger out at Jacob. So she says to Jacob, I'm not having any kids here. Why don't you go and have sex with my maidservant? His name is Bilhah, and then at least we can have some children together. Uh, the children won't actually be conceived through me, but it'll become my child because she's my maidservant. So at least I'll be in a better position here. So Jacob, of course, is obedient to his wife, and he has intercourse with Bilhah, and Bilhah conceives. And the concept here, it's a very interesting one, that after the child is born, the child is then placed on the knees of the one who is in charge of the maidservant. You know, and so when that happens, when the child is placed on her knees, literally it's a way of adoption, and that child is technically her child. So it's not Bilhah's child, it now will become Rachel's child. And that was just the process that was used to signify that, Rachel was kind of over Bilhah. She was the maid, Bilhah was servant, so, that's kind of the legal process of that time. They didn't go through formal adoption type of signing of any sorts of agreement, but it was the placing of the child on the knees that sort of said, well, she's yours now. This child is yours, or he's yours. So Rachel gives Bilhah to Jacob, and the official title is as a consort. So not as a wife, but as a consort, as somebody that you're going to have sex with, conceive a child with, but there's no relationship in terms of marriage or anything like that. It's just the fact of having a child. Similar, I guess we would say today, to the surrogate mother aspect, that we're kind of familiar with, except that they didn't have, of course, the technology in terms of implanting the child in the surrogate mother, but she was kind of, in a way, it was their surrogacy at the time that they had. So she conceives a son, and the son is given a name by Rachel, because Rachel is now officially the mother. And the name is Dan. And Dan comes from a Hebrew root, which means he has vindicated me. So now I have been vindicated. I am a mother. Not just Leah is having the children, but I am as well. Bilhah then conceives a second son. So very fruitful. She conceives a second son. Rachel calls him Naphtali. And Naphtali means in this kind of divine wrestling match. And the wrestling match is sort of, in a way, between Rachel and Leah in terms of having children and which child will be preferred. Now there's going to go through this whole situation of now all these children that are part of the situation, that are part of the family of Jacob, part of his household. And so they each have kind of a name that is going to signify really a position that they're going to have within the family. So the names become very important, and the Hebrew roots that they portray. Now, Leah at the time, she's not having any more children. She had had the four, and there's a pause here, and for some reason she has no more children. But she saw what Rachel was doing. She saw this situation with Bilhah, and now Bilhah is conceiving and putting the child on the knee and becoming now Rachel's child. And she's like, oh, I'm not having kids now. Rachel is having kids, this whole back and forth. So she said, hey, you know what I'm going to do? I have a maidservant too. My maidservant is Zilpah. I'm going to take a clue from Rachel, and I'm going to give my maidservant, Zilpah, to Jacob. Hey, Rachel is doing it. Hey, I can do it too. So Zillah conceives a child, and Leah names the child Gad, which means in luck. So now I've been lucky. There's another child. Zilpah conceives a second child, just like Bilhah conceived a second child, so Zilpah does. And Leah names him Asher, in my good fortune. So we have luck, we have fortune. The favor of God is now upon Leah again, and there are more children on the scene. Now one day, Leah and Jacob's son Reuben, who was the oldest, he found some mandrakes. Now mandrakes were very important in ancient times. They were a herb, and this herb was thought to help with conception, and it also had some sexual overtones in terms of it would give one a greater sexual desire and enhance pleasure in sexual relations. Rachel notices this, and she says, hey, Leah, do you mind if I have some of this? I'm having problems conceiving. Hey, maybe these mandrakes would help me out a little bit. Leah was upset that her sister asked for them. She was like, I'm involved with this. Why is she asking? Why is she getting involved in this? And she said, well, let's make a deal here. She talks to Rachel, and they work it out. Rachel will allow Jacob to sleep with Leah if Leah gives her some mandrakes. So she said, well, yeah, you can sleep with them, and been sleeping with me, but yeah, it's fine. You can sleep with them, but I have to have the mandrakes. That's a little exchange there. So Leah conceives now, when she sleeps with Jacob, a fifth son. She had the four. She had the other two with Zilpah, so now there's a fifth son involved. And she names that fifth son Issachar, which means my reward. I have paid for you. How did she pay for him? She paid for him with the mandrakes. So Issachar comes along. Leah then conceives a sixth son, comes on the scene, and she names the sixth son Zebulon. Zebulon means a bridegroom's gift. He has brought me a precious gift. So here now is another son, another precious gift. And you can see from the names how deeply appreciated all these sons were, and how important all these sons were in terms of the family situation, and how beautiful really it is that they all have this desire for children. They have this desire to continue the name, to expand the family, and they see children really as a blessing, a beautiful sense of family and the joy of conceiving. She then gave birth to a daughter. So finally, after all these sons, the daughter comes on the scene, and the daughter's name is Dinah. So Dinah is born as the first of the females in the line. Finally, Rachel on her own, and we don't know if it was the mandrakes or what happened, but finally she conceives a son. So no more maidservant. Rachel conceives. She names that son Joseph. And the root of Joseph means, may he add. So we've got plenty of sons going on. We have a daughter in the situation now. There's another addition. So Joseph Mehiad. So all of this beautiful conceiving is going on, all these children all over the place. Jacob is, working hard, doing his thing there, and he's got maidservants, he's got 2 wives. Things are blossoming beautifully for him. And of course, the children would be considered a sign of God's blessing. They would be considered a sign of wealth, prosperity, a beautiful situation having all of those children. So now Jacob has the wives, the children, the maidservants. He says, I think it's time for me to leave. Done my thing with Laban here. Things have worked out well. The wives, the children, beautiful. Things are going well. So is it okay if I leave now? He says to Laban, with my wives, children. I've given all these years of service, many, many years. The 7 for one wife, 7 for another, then all the children. I mean, he's been working hard and helping Laban. Laban's getting rich. But Laban wants him to stay. I mean, he's got Jacob. He's a good worker. I have all these sons are here. He's thinking, oh, these sons can work, and we can have more flocks. We can have more farming, and this is going to be great. So he said, no, I want you to stay. But Jacob said, it's really time for me to leave, and really, you don't have to pay me anything, no wages at all. All you have to do is a simple thing: remove every dark animal from the sheep, and every spotted or speckled one from among the goats. The normal color of a sheep is a light gray, the goats dark brown or black. Thus, Jacob would get very few animals. He's saying, just remove really the more plentiful animals from the flock. Remove them, they'll be yours. I'll just take a few animals. Of course, it's a great bargain. I mean, Laban's going to make out great in that situation. He's going to get, at least 80, 90% of the flocks, and Jacob's going to get very little with that. And so Jacob is smart here. He knows if he takes too many of the flocks, if he takes, even 50%, 60%, whatever, Laban's going to be reluctant to let him go. So he says, you take all the good part of the sheep and the goats, and the majority, they're going to go to you, and I'll just take very little. So Laban removes the streaked and spotted he-goats and all the speckled and spotted she-goats, all those with some white on them, and the fully dark-colored sheep, and he left those with his sons. He said, I'll remove all these, and so obviously his sons, not Jacob's, are going to get the vast majority of the flock. But Jacob has a little plan here. Jacob isn't done. He's been studying this for a while. Very cagey guy. So Jacob gets fresh shoots of poplar, almond, and plane trees. And he made white stripes in them and placed them in the watering troughs where they would water. And when the animals were in heat and mated, they would bring forth streaked, speckled, and spotted kids. And the thought was that as they conceived, under the influence of those symbols, the white symbols, that this would influence their mating and their conception, and that was the thought at the time. Jacob kept the sheep apart and set them to face the streaked or fully dark-colored animals of Laban. Jacob then produced these special flocks of his own. The thought was that the visual stimulation could in some way affect the breeding. Now, does that happen? No, most probably not, but in a way, Jacob's system here seemed to work for him. He concentrated the rods also near the hardier animals so that his flocks would be healthier. Again, being cagey, saying, well, these are hardier, and let's see how this works. And then when they have children, their children will be just the color that is appropriate for me, and my flocks will increase. The result of all of this manipulation on the part of Jacob was that his flocks grew more numerous, and his flocks were healthier flocks. Now, what do we learn from this interaction in chapter 30? Well, first of all, we learn a lot about envy. Rachel starts out as envious, and so we see those human emotions. And we see how envy can lead into anger. She's envious of her sister having all these children. What does it lead to? Anger at Jacob. I mean, Jacob, he wasn't really involved in the situation, but he gets the brunt of the anger. We also see how Leah now imitates Rachel. When Rachel uses the maidservant, Leah uses her maidservant to have more sons. Again, imitation. So that relationship between the sisters, there's certainly envy, there's anger, but there's also imitation, which in a way is kind of a little flattery, saying, hey, you had a good idea here. I'm going to follow your idea. So again, a complicated relationship there between Leah and Rachel. And you can imagine, sharing the same husband, the difficulties having children, all of this factors into their relationships, a very human story of human conflict that we see all the time, right, in terms of envy and jealousy and anger. We also see mandrakes, the use of certain herbs for stimulation, sexual stimulation, right? The idea that these can help. We have, of course, all sorts of things that we use today with the same purpose. How can we enhance our sexuality? How can we make our sexuality even better? And how can we use natural methods to promote conception and promote a healthier sexual life? We also see, of course, the deal making between the sisters. Again, that complicated relationship that the sisters have. Well, if you give me this, I'll give you that. And Jacob caught in the middle. Well, you go and have sex with this one, and yet I'll take the mandrakes. That whole back and forth. We see Rachel, after all those years, all those attempts, finally conceiving. What do we learn from that? Patience, patience, patience. Sometimes we think of our time and what we want on our schedule. God's schedule, very different. But can we be patient? Can we wait upon God? Or are we impulsive? Do we do things, to promote our own schedule? And can this sometimes be a bad thing? Can it create more problems for us? Jealousy, envy, rivalry, as we see between the sisters. We also see Jacob as a very intelligent person, using his intelligence to kind of outmaneuver Laban. Laban naturally not wanting to let him go. Jacob saying, well, I got to work something out here. So if I give him all the sheep, that'll be great, right? If I give him all the sheep, he'll take that deal. But then I mate them in a certain way, and my flock becomes more numerous and healthier. In the long run, it's going to work to my advantage. So Jacob is very skillful as a breeder. So he studies how to do this. And his flocks become very numerous and very, very healthy, very good. We also see Jacob's wealth increasing. God blessing him with the wealth of certainly the sons, the wealth of the flocks, and so the blessings that he gets from God, which come really from his hard work, come from his patience, come from his kindness towards all of his wives. And the maidservant's a very kind person, also very respectful of Laban, but all of this leads to what? To the blessing of wealth. And so we have Jacob, we have Rachel, we have Leah. And were they saying yes to? Ultimately, they're saying yes to God. And who was that first one who said yes to God in the Bible? Father Abraham. Father Abraham has many friends. Many friends has Father Abraham. I am one of them, and so were you. So let's all praise the Lord. Keep on praising the Lord. God bless.